like everybody has joined the meeting. Hopefully you can all hear me all right. Just like when we originally sent out the email, if you happen to be using a speakerphone, if you're not asking a question, if you would please mute it, because sometimes it can cause echoes and such. So hopefully we can get through this without any kind of technical issues like that. My name's Dave Mash, and I obviously work for TradeSoft. Today we're going to be talking about the new changes to the estimate sheet for the new release. The format of these lunch and learn sessions is going to be the first half hour or so, or if it takes me less time, just going through some of the new features and stuff, highlight a lot of the big things. And then the last half an hour, we'll just open up the floor for a question and answer session. I'll try and go at a fairly slow to medium pace. That way, hopefully you'll get all the information you need, won't lose anybody. But like I say, at the end we'll open up the floor to questions. If you would, please try and keep them relevant to estimate sheet, because there's plenty of other sessions where we'll dive into other topics and new areas. So hopefully enough of you that have gotten it installed had time to play with it, so some of this may seem familiar, but may show you a few things you haven't seen yet. So go ahead and just dive right in. In ProjectPAK 7.0, with the estimate sheet, obviously the most notable change is the estimate tree structure on the left. Instead of just having one big two-dimensional grid where it's kind of up to you whenever you choose to put in summary nodes like subtotals, totals, and grand totals, and then trying to navigate a two-dimensional grid where you have to expand it and collapse it, we've made everything a lot simpler with a tree structure. And now there's no subtotals, totals, or grand totals. They're just summary nodes in a tree. And you can have as many levels deep as you desire. If you had a need to go 10 levels deep on summary nodes or 20, you could. It makes no difference now. It's limitless. But if you haven't looked before, you can notice the grid is still there, but it's solely based on the context of the tree that you have selected. So as you can see out in the tree, I have the base bid selected. So it just shows me all the, call them first summary levels. So if I collapse this, it just shows all the summary levels I have underneath the tree at that point. So like I say, it's based on the context of the tree. Whereas if I click on this first summary node, it shows me everything underneath it, which if I expand it, they all happen to be products or assemblies. So it's all relevant on which node of the tree you have selected. The grid still works the same in that you can still edit the grid. So, even if I click at the base bid, if I wanted to change the quantities on these summary nodes, I could. Same difference if I click on the summary node itself. I can change any of these attributes that I may have on the grid. So that part still works the same. The biggest thing you'll notice is that there's no plus or minus in the grid until you get down to a product. And then you have your plus, so you can expand it. And so at this point, you can expand it, and then if you have sub-assemblies, you can expand them further to get down to the material and labor line items so that you can make edits there if need be. But we've simplified the grid in that, like I say, it's solely based on the context of the tree that you're clicked on. A little trick, though, too, is if you're at a summary node and you have products inside it, if you don't want to go out to the tree to click it to open one of them, you can double-click this little down arrow, and it'll jump you to that node of the tree. So that now I can expand it and edit to my heart's content. A few other things, too, you'll notice in the tree. The icons are, if you use ShopPAK, they're fairly similar. A product icon looks like a product. Summary node's a folder. But you'll also notice, as we kind of go through it, there's a few other icons, like this little yellow exclamation triangle. And that's the icon we use for no print. So if I click on this, no print's checked. So it gives me this little icon so you can see it from the tree and be able to quickly tell that that's no print. Same difference if you click ignore, you get another little icon that's a red, bigger exclamation point. So the whole idea is you just get feedback in the tree, depending upon what you've done on the grid. So that's what those little icons are for. And a little further on, I'll explain a few of the other ones that you see, like alternates and change orders. As we're kind of going through it, the other thing you'll kind of notice too is down at the bottom, if I click on base bid, you have this summary node, which is fairly similar to what you're used to, with a few little added extras. We've added a pie graph, which you can actually rotate if you want to, if you have a desire to. You can rotate it around. The other things that you'll notice too is in this space right here, it says cubic space and weight. And now what we allow you to do, I'm going to scroll all the way out to the right on my grid, is that for each assembly or library items of the line type item, you can either just type in a cubic space and a weight, and then it'll aggregate it up through the tree into the different summary nodes and such, so that because I have it set up, it says I have 907 cubic feet, and I haven't done any weight. The other method you can do for assemblies is if you go to the options menu and go to estimate, and then you click on the custom column define button. You can also set up down here and give it the 3 columns that you use to calculate the width, depth, and height of a product, and it will automatically calculate the cubic space for you. If you estimate a little simpler, for each assembly, you could just simply type in the cubic space that it is. Weight, there's no automatic calculation. You just simply type it in. Like I said, you can do it for library items too. If you open up a library item, see if I can find one of the type item. These may be. If you have one that's of the type item, I'll just change it. You can just simply type its weight in here or its cubic space in here, whichever would be appropriate, or both. And then once you put them in the estimate, it's smart enough, it'll grab those numbers and aggregate them up for you. So in other words, if I click on break room 114, it shows you all the separate cubic spaces. But just because I've clicked on this, if you look down here, it tells you for the estimate, but the context of the tree, it's 94 cubic feet for this particular room. And it would do the same for weight, if that was an interest. The sole purpose is so that, obviously, at the end of it, you can calculate possibly how many trucks, or if you're shipping at LTL or something like that, you know, how many cubic feet and or weight it may be. So, like I said, any node you click on, you can see the cubic space for it, or you can look at it down here, because it'll always tell you for the entire estimate, or just the context of what you've selected. The other thing that's down at the bottom, I call this area now, I just call it our dashboard, because that's in essence what it is. You get this summary node, but it's solely based on the context. So now that I've clicked on break room 114, everything automatically recalcs for that particular node. So in my little world here, this room's worth $3104.96. Same difference if I take it all the way down to a product level. It'll show me for a specific product. Or, like I say, if you click on a summary node or the base bid, or you can click on the entire thing. So it's solely dependent on the context that you're clicked on. The added feature you have now, too, is there's 2 other types of breakouts that you'll see on the dashboard. I'm going to skip the cost types for a minute and just jump to line types. This is similar to like your line type analysis report, only you don't see individual products, but it shows you a breakout based on the line type. So now, as you can see for the base bid, here's my labor hours and my cost associated with it, material cost, and then any other line types I may have in there. It'll show me a breakout. And just like the other, it's always based upon the context of the tree. So it solely depends on what you have selected as to what it's going to show. The last tab at the bottom says cost types. This is a third breakout that's, I guess you could call it, in between the summary and the line types. But what we allow you to do is, I think there's 13 different cost types here. If you go into the library and you assign, I'll just pick a typical item like melamine. If I open up 3/4 white melamine, as long as you assign all of your library items the correct cost types, and it doesn't matter what their type is, whether it's labor, material, what have you. You're just associating it with this particular cost type. Once you assign all of your library items a particular cost type, now you can see a breakout for your estimate, depending on which node you're clicked on, yet another breakout so that you could easily see, oh, here's my fabrication hours and cost, material cost, and then finishing if you had it, and then any of the other ones that you see here, depending upon what's in your estimate. You can now see a simple breakout. There's also a report that goes along with that too that's very similar to the line type analysis. It's just called cost type. It looks very similar. The only difference, instead of breaking it out by line type, we now break it out by cost type. While we're on reports too, another added kind of feature that goes along with it is, just like the line type analysis, if you don't select, it used to be if you didn't select anything, the report would run for your entire estimate. Or if you selected certain things, it would only be for whatever you had selected. The same is true now. It's just whatever you have selected in the tree. But now we actually tell you, here's the nodes you selected for this particular report, so that you know what you ran the report for. So for instance, just like in the past, if I wanted to see for break room 114, if I wanted to run the line type analysis, I would just run it just the same. Only it's going to tell me it's only for break room 114. Along with that too, just like you could before, if you hold the control key down, you can select more than one node. Run the same report or a similar one, and it'll actually list them all out up here for you. So just a little insight there for reports, especially line type analysis. I know is probably one of our most popular reports, but the beauty of this little dashboard is that if you don't need to print it out, if you just want summaries at line types, you just simply click on it and you get a lot of information right at your fingertips. All right. Moving along, as far as the tree and the grid go hand in hand, the biggest difference now is that on the grid, like if I was in the break room and I just hit insert on my keyboard or right click, it brings in one line that's of the material type. If you click the drop down, you get most of your typical line types, only you don't see any of the summary nodes like subtotal, total. You don't see item or any of the begin group, end groups, because it's all done with the tree now. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this row. The way you set up a new summary node is you select the part in the tree where you want the summary node underneath. So let's say we needed to add another room to the base bid. Simply right-click it, go to Add, and choose Summary. And then now add the summary node to the tree, and now we can name it to our heart's content. And so now we have a new summary node here that we can do whatever we want with. If you need to rename something in the tree, if you click it again, just like in Windows, it highlights it, you can type over it. Or we actually have a little flyout here that if you click on it, and you can change the description and the quantity, check whether it's ignored or no print, and whether it's an alternate or not. And in a few minutes here, I'll get to alternates. And if you want to add notes, all this is on this little flyout that you can have opened or closed, and you can make some changes to it. The other thing, along with the tree, is on the tree you can do cut, copy, and paste. So let's say I have this new room and I want to cut it because maybe I clicked on the wrong node. Maybe I wanted it underneath the break room. I can right-click and say paste as children, and then it'll make it a child underneath the break room here for new room. It's similar on the grid. If you can cut and paste grid lines around too. It just depends on what you want to do with them. For instance, if I click on the break room here and highlight a few products, I can right-click and say copy. Click on the new room and right-click out here on the grid. Right-click on the tree and say paste. Children, and then it pastes it underneath it. So you can still use the grid lines to paste. It's just you have to use the tree to tell it where you want to paste it. So it's just getting used to going back and forth between the tree and that. And with the tree, you have 3 different kinds of paste. Paste before, after, as a child. As a child just simply means you want to put it inside that summary node. Paste before and after means it's going to paste it at the same level you're at. only before or after in the tree. So from an organization standpoint, if you want it to come before or after, that's when you use those. The other thing that's a little different too is that if you wanted to add an item, like maybe you have a custom buyout item, or you just have a reason to add an item line, instead of like you used to do on the grid, insert, and it would already be of the type item, you simply right-click on the tree, go to add, and choose item. And now it's going to add an item here. You'd fill in the description, the unit cost, and whatever else would be appropriate, just like before. So we could call this new item. And the reason being is because now we have a tree, everything has to have a hierarchy. And in our tree, an item is at the same level and a hierarchy is a product. That's the other thing you've probably noticed too if you've used it. Instead of using begin group and end group, it's now just called product. And if you go to a subassembly, they're just called subassemblies. Instead of begin, end subgroup, and end. With a subassembly, you still have a begin and an end, but with a product, it's just simply an end. There's no need for a begin row anymore, so we don't use them. So we've tried to make the grid and the tree as intuitive and easy to use as possible, so that when you have a selection in the tree, you're just focusing in the grid on that particular selection, so to speak. All right. The last thing as we kind of go through here, adding assemblies in. There's no more button up here that says copy assemblies, and you go into the copy assembly dialog box and kind of select all your assemblies and then use a batch process to copy them in. Now we're single threading it. Is a good way to term it. If I want to add new assemblies in this new room summary node, over on the right there's another little flyout. If I click it, now I can see here's all of my assemblies, and they're sorted by their category. So it's solely based on the categories you have. Simply expand the category that you want to find it in, grab your assembly, and then I'm going to drag it to the grid. And if you look carefully, I don't know if it'll be as accurate since we have a go-to meeting and there's a little delay, but since I'm near the bottom of this row that says base cab 2-door 2-drawer M, it's telling me it's going to insert it after. And if I move up a little bit, it'll tell me I'm going to insert it before. So it's solely based on where you're on the grid as to where it's going to put it. So if you wanted it to come first in it, you just drag it all the way up to the top until it says insert before, and then it'll have the name of whatever's there. Once I let go of it, it drops it, and it brings up our handy estimate item dialog box. And here I can add in the quantity, and then I can change any attributes. If you're the type that uses parametric estimating and you have attributes that you can change, they'll all be listed here. As well as I can change any work groups if you use work groups. So I can make any changes I want here. The added feature that you'll notice is that, in this case, not all of my custom columns are shown, and some actually say not used. And any of those, I can't click in here, and I can't do anything. I'm going to click OK so it copies it to the estimate sheet, and then I'll explain why those columns are set up that way. And so now it's going to copy it into my estimate sheet. And so now it should be there what we have. So now it's there where we dropped it on our estimate sheet. I'm going to go ahead and close that flyout, because just as you saw, you can do it in that dialog box, or you could simply change them here on the grid. Both do the same thing. The added feature, too, is the dialog box comes up every time you drag and drop an assembly, or I can right-click a row and choose Edit Row, and it brings it back up, and I can keep editing to my heart's content. Okay? I'm going to go to the Define menu now, and I'm going to go to a new entry here. It says Assembly Column Alias Names. This is where I can decide inside that dialog box. It doesn't change anything on the grid, but inside the dialog box, you can actually change the name of a custom column so that if you're using them and you're doubling up on them for different assemblies, so a column may mean one thing for one assembly, it may mean something totally different for another assembly. Instead of trying to memorize what they are or giving yourself little notes, you can actually change the name of the column now for those particular assemblies. Or you can simply uncheck it so it doesn't show it. And when it doesn't show it, it puts that not used, and it doesn't show the name of the column. All of this, though, is solely based on the assembly category. So as you may realize, depending upon how you've organized your assemblies, you may have a need to create more categories to make better use of this. So that way, the whole idea is from an estimating standpoint, now you're just simply focusing on only the columns that you need to for particular assemblies. So that's how that works as far as drag and drop. You probably noticed, too, on the same flyout, you also see library items, because you can drag and drop library items just the same. So if you happen to have something that was an item, that you typically put in estimates, like maybe a countertop bracket or something, you can simply drag and drop those just the same. Brings up a similar dialog box so that you could edit things. Typically with a library item, it may only be just quantity, so you could just edit that, but it depends on how you estimate, so now I can copy those in the same. The other thing, too, is that let's say, for instance, I had a custom one-off assembly, and I needed to create that, or just create some kind of product that's not in my category. You right-click the tree and go to Add, and this time you just say Product. And it simply inserts one row that says Product. Now you can name it. And now once you have it in here, now I can drag and drop all the library items I need inside it. So I'll just grab a few items here just real quick. So maybe I need some particle board. I can drag and drop it right in there. I can type in the quantity here, or if you're kind of like me where you're used to doing it on the grid, I just hit Enter. Let's drag a few other things just to get them in here. And maybe I need some birch for whatever reason. Once you get them in here, then you can come back if you're of the same mindset I am. Now you could come back in here and type in your quantities to your heart's content. Or like I said, you could have done it in the dialog box when you were single threading them in there. The whole idea is you can find all your library items and drag them into here. And that's how you create custom items. Or however you used to use begin and end groups. Same idea. All right. And then a couple more things here, and then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. The next couple things I want to go over is just alternates and change orders. As you've probably already noticed in here, I have one alternate. The beauty of alternates is that you can add them. You don't have to add them at the end, because as you'll see in the later Lunch and Learn, when you do documents, they print below your totals area anyways. So it doesn't really matter where they're at in your tree. So, it may make sense, like if I expand this alternate, it happens to do additional casework for the lab, which is right above it, so I just added it right after it. The nice thing about alternates, like I said, even if I went to this new room, maybe it was an alternate for adding more casework for this break room or, whatever the case may be. On this little flyout on the left side, if I expand it, to make something an alternate, you just simply check this box. And now it's an alternate. And with alternates, too, you can also track the status. So now, obviously, it's in pending. Once it got approved, once you won the job, they probably come back and say, we want to go with alternates 1, 5, and 6. You can come back in your estimate, flag the ones they didn't approve as rejected, and keep those ones they did as approved, which does make a difference if you're using ProjectPAK when you convert it over into ProjectPAK, whether it's going to convert it or not. So, and it's really handy, too, because with the whole smart icon kind of concept, as you can see, since it's pending, the little icon has a plus, and it's blue. Blue happens to be the color for the status pending. If I change it to approved, it'll turn green. If I change it to rejected, it'll turn red. And the little plus just simply means that this alternate is to the positive side. If it happened to be that it was a negative amount, so if I went in here and made some stuff negative, let's make it all negative for fun. You can see now, since I got enough stuff, it turned it to a negative sign. So the idea is if you had this open, you could easily tell whether an alternate was an add or a deduct. And like I said, depending upon the color of it, you'd know the status of it too. Like I say, it's simply adding a summary node and flagging it as an alternate, and that's all you have to do. The other thing that you may have noticed too on the base bid, if I click on this summary, it also adds up all of your alternates here just for your own benefit. So you can see, oh, here's the total price, and then with alternates it adds this much. So it's just there for your own information, but you could see it very easily. So that's how alternates go. The other thing too, I'll do change orders here in just a minute, but on the reports, like your line type analysis and cost type, this dialog box always comes up too, so that you can tell it, oh, within alternates, do you want to include them in the reporting or not? And you can say yes or no, and the same with change orders. So it just depends on what you want to see on the report. So that's, for the most part, that's alternates. And then change orders, I guess you could say, are similar. The biggest difference is you have to go up to the highest node of the tree and right-click, and you just go down to Add Change Order. And when you do, it creates a new node in the tree, and now you can name it accordingly. So we'll be simple and just call it change order number 2. Change orders, just like alternates, you can track their status, only there's a couple of extras. So you have pending, submitted, accepted, approved, and rejected. These, just the same as your alternates, when you change status, the color of the icon changes. So if it's accepted, I'll click off of it. It's kind of a, I guess, a bluish color. Just depends. If it's approved, it's green. If it's rejected, it's red. So we've tried to make these fairly smart and simple. It's kind of like if you use ShopPAK, once you get used to the color coding and the icons, it makes a lot of sense. And the sole idea, when you look at your tree, you get a lot of information just from the little icons. So I think for the most part, that covers most of the big changes as far as the estimate sheet goes. So now for the last half hour, we'll just open the floor for questions and answers. So.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
How do you do multiple thread products or items?
By multiple thread, and what do you mean?
You called it a single thread when you were putting a single item in there. I've got a room that has 3 different types of wall cabinets and 3 different types of base cabinets. Before, I could go in at the assembly level and click all my 3 different wall cabinets and all of my base cabinets at one time, and then it would shoot it over into the grid.
Right. Now it's just single threading. You just drag each one individually. Or if you can also, if you're the type that is used to typing in codes, you can still do this too, and it'll bring them in just the same. So it's just you leave it at the type material. It used to be item. Now it's just of the type material, but if you know your codes, you can type them in, insert lines, and do it that way. But as far as inserting them in, you have 2 choices. You can either do it that way or on the flyout. You just simply click through, drag this one, put in a quantity if you know it, or you can just hit enter and it puts it in the grid. And you can edit the grid after the fact. But now it's just dragging them individually.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Yes, I have one about this change orders. In the old world, we estimated the job in ProjectPAK. We converted over to ShopPAK and created a job in ShopPAK. Later, change order items would come up. We would go back into ProjectPAK and convert individual changes as they were approved. We would convert them back over into ShopPAK.
Right.
So it seemed it was 2 separate worlds, it seemed like, even though I know they share the same database. Now I'm wondering how you handle change orders after the original job is converted to ShopPAK.
Rather than creating a new estimate. That's why we added in the functionality for change orders. Just like what I've done here is that you would open the original job, right-click the node, and add your change orders as you went. And since you're tracking status, they won't even convert into ShopPAK until I believe they're in the accepted status. And then once they are, as you'll see, I think it's Thursday or Friday is conversion, estimate conversion.
Okay.
Just to kind of give you a little idea, you can actually tell it that, work order creation, all change orders, and then based upon the statuses and stuff and what you select, you have a lot more flexibility when it comes time to conversion, because you can actually just, in essence, say, the only thing I want to convert right now is this change order here, and you can drag it and drop it, and that's all it's going to convert.
Okay, good.
So we've made conversion a ton easier, but along with now that obviously you have change orders that are in the same idea, like you said, in the old world, most people usually created a separate estimate for them so that you could see them easily.
We did also.
Yeah.
This will make it a lot easier.
Yeah, because the idea now is that instead of having, if you had 10 change orders, you'd have, 10 or 11 estimates that encompass everything. Now it's all inside one, so you could easily see everything at a glance if you need to.
Is one of your other sessions devoted to the production of the report that you'd send to your customer?
Yeah, I think one of the sessions, I may have them mixed up, but I believe Thursday and Friday, and then there's one next week. I think Thursday or Friday is either documents and or conversion, and then probably next Monday is conversion, so something like that. So yeah, there's sessions devoted specific to documents, and then another one specific to estimate conversion into ShopPAK.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
I was just curious, if you entered in several library items and didn't fill out the dialog box but just left them until later and forgot one, is there anything higher up in the tree that would kind of alert you that there are, no, zero quantities and stuff underneath it?
There's nothing in the tree that would jump out at you to say, hey, not everything has a quantity. So just like we're in here, just like in this custom product, if one of these didn't have a quantity, no, there's nothing out in the tree that would alert you to that. It's still up to you to make sure that they're filled in appropriately.
Okay.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Is there anything different as far as how you set up job spec and handle that? Is that any different?
Job spec itself is the only thing different about it. Instead of use the tree instead of the grid. So if I had gone into job spec and made changes, or I just wanted to apply something after the fact, you just right-click the tree and go to apply job spec. Other than that, there's nothing different about job spec in this release.
Dave,
Yeah.
on our assemblies, we use a parametric database. We don't have begin subgroup and end subgroup and all that stuff anymore. We haven't brought this new version online yet, but when we do, does it convert all these to a product in the conversion process when we convert the database, or is there anything we're going to have to do to our assemblies to make them work appropriately in the tree?
No. There's whenever you convert over to ProjectPAK 7.0, there's a separate conversion utility that will convert everything over for you. So anything that used to have an end group and begin group, it automatically changes it to the type product. Same difference for sub-assemblies. They used to be begin group and end group. They get converted appropriately as well to say sub-assembly now.
Okay.
So all of that will be done for you inside the conversion process.
Dave, when
changing the when adding change orders after the bid has been accepted. Typically, we'll get multiple change orders throughout the project process. Say like change order 1 was accepted, and then change order 2 weeks later has been accepted. How do you, when you convert that, will it look at both of them, or will it look at just the new one?
Yeah, I can look at both of them. It's still, like you say, there'll be more information on that. I think it's next Monday, but it's still similar in that it still marks things that have already been converted. So, yeah, if you had converted stuff previously, it knows it, and it still knows everything you haven't. But like I say, if you were getting ready to convert it and you're like, hey, I got both these at the same time, you actually have the ability to highlight both, and you can make conversion dependent upon what context of the tree you have selected, so that you can kind of pick and choose what you want to convert if you have that desire to. So if you had 5 change orders and you knew 3 of them were good to go, and you're like, okay, let's convert them all right now, you can very easily.
The initial customer setup and new project, a new job setup and everything work the same as the old?
Yeah, as far as creating business contacts and projects, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, creating a new estimate, you start and you usually sign a business, and then you...
Yeah, none of that has changed. The only thing I've seen just with in my little databases is when you set up that new project estimate settings, I switched mine around a little bit because that'll still flow in, but the way it used to be set up in here wasn't as convenient as it was in the old system. For instance, one thing I can tell you, and you'll find out with documents, is that I found I didn't need section rows anymore. Because usually for me, the only thing I use section rows for was for a document purpose, so it prints in bold. You actually have the ability inside documents to tell it for each summary node. Like if on my document I wanted each one of these summary nodes printed, you can tell it to print a header, and it's the same as like a section row used to be. So it does it for you. So you don't have to add them in if that's what you used to use section rows for. So, but I mean, other than that, creating an estimate is virtually the same. And you can still do save as and such. The one thing I guess I didn't go over that makes sense because it just now thought of it. If we go to this new room, this custom product here that I created, which wasn't a great one by any means, but it used to be, let's say I created this custom stick-built item and I was like, that's something that would make sense to reuse again from here. It would be nice. You know, like if you were doing like a custom reception desk wall and you had one that's like, that would be nice to have this. So I don't have to, you know, copy in every library item every time. Makes sense. It used to be you had to copy this, go to the assembly tab, create a new assembly and paste it in. They actually made that a little simpler so that, you know, this particular item, I want to create it as an assembly. I just simply go down here to create new assembly, and it'll create it for you. And that's true of whether it's a product or it's a whole node, because obviously not everybody estimates the same way. Kind of in the parametric world, most people think of an assembly as just a simple product that has attributes you can change. But assembly is just like in the old world, in the new world too, an assembly can be like an entire room. So maybe I created this break room 114, and this is a typical break room and a lot of stuff I see. And you're thinking, man, that would be handy to have, so I could copy this into an estimate, and bam, I got all my assemblies. You can save it as an assembly. But you can also, if that were the case, I could right-click this row and say Create New Assembly, and it'll create an assembly of everything inside there. So just like before, you give it a name. So maybe it's just break room. Give it a category so you can find it later. I'll just put it in extras for now. Fill in any other appropriate information. Click OK. Now you got yourself an assembly that you can copy in later. So we've kind of made that process a little bit easier, so now it's, in essence, one click instead of having to copy, paste, and all that good stuff to create it as an assembly. So now it's a lot simpler to do.
Hey, Dave, what about cutting and pasting and moving around the nodes?
Yeah.
Can I do that in the tree?
Yep. Yeah. Just to show you, here's that assembly, the new one that's created, so I could copy that in. But yeah, inside the estimate, like you say, for some reason I wanted to break them down lower. Maybe I put it in the wrong spot, or I was putting in alternates, and maybe from a visual thing I like to have them at the bottom. I can simply right-click it and say cut, and then maybe I want to put it down under delivery and installation. I can say paste after, and I'll put it right down here. Now it's done, so it's down here. Or you can do products, whatever the case is. You can cut, copy, and paste inside here to your heart's content. So here's a good example. In the old world, it was a little bit easier. You throw in say I did this estimate, and then I realized after the fact, oh, I got to split this up into two sections. Maybe it's in phases or floors or something. And you realized after the fact, you're like, oh, in your estimate, I need a price for this and this, because they split it up. In the old world, you just go to the grid, and if you were using subtotals, maybe it's just a total you throw in here and there, a grand total. Now you could quite simply just go to your base bit here and say add and say summary. And once it brings it up, I'll just call it phase 1, and then I'll create another one, call it phase 2, so it's simple. So I got phase 1 and phase 2. Obviously, this one's not going to work out great, but now I can go through the tree, and I'm just holding Control down on my keyboard and just selecting all the stuff I want in maybe phase 1. And now I can just simply right-click and say cut. And then once it cuts it, go into phase and just say paste as children, so it puts them inside there. And then I could do the same with the rest of it. So maybe in my little fun demo world here, I can grab all these because maybe they go inside phase 2. Obviously, delivering installation, you'd have to break up in this instance, but we'll pretend it's easy. I'll just go to paste as children. So now, real quick, now I've just made my tree just a level deeper, or however you want to do it. So it's really easy after the fact if stuff like that comes up and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that. It's really simple to cut, copy, and paste stuff around inside the tree itself.
Hey Dave, quick question for you. We've got some big jobs that we're working on that we haven't quite started yet. Would we be able to utilize this newer version if it was estimated in the older version? A lot of these tools, especially like the change orders and the phasing that you just showed, would be really powerful for those upcoming jobs. Is there a way to transfer those into this new version?
Meaning you already have them in your old version?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you use that, just like I was telling the other guy, when you use the conversion utility, when you upgrade to 7.0, it takes your existing database and converts it over to the new one.
Okay.
So everything's it'll take your existing job and it'll turn it into a tree based upon how you put in subtotals, totals, grand totals, and all that good stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Just to show you something real quick too, a couple things. I'm sure it was in the literature, but the save function has gotten a lot quicker than it used to be, simply because in the old world, when you click save, doesn't matter what you changed, it resaved every single line in the estimate. So, if you set to auto save and it was 15 minutes, every 15 minutes the little hourglass comes up and you're like, oh, okay, 5 minutes or whatever, depending on how big your estimate is. Save is smart enough now, it actually only remembers exactly what you saved, and that's all it resaves. So if you only changed one little attribute in one product, it's going to take seconds to resave your estimate because that's all that changed. So saving's a lot quicker, as well as you kind of saw, the copy and pasting around in an estimate is a lot quicker just because of the way they changed the algorithms, the underlying algorithms. I'm sure especially for some of those that have already converted, the speed factor, I think development said it's at least 10 times faster, but it seems to me just, when I was testing and playing around and pretending I was estimating again, it seemed a lot quicker than even that. So as far as speed goes, I've noticed quite a bit. The speed, copy and paste is tons quicker, especially if you're pasting in the middle. It's almost as fast as if you're pasting at the end or anything. And the size of the estimate doesn't make nearly as big of a difference. And speaking of size of the estimate, now the size of your estimates are virtually limitless. I think now, it used to be around 50,000 lines you had to create a new estimate. The new limit's like 2.6 million lines or something ridiculous like that. So it's quite high. And just to kind of give you an idea too, the laptop I'm using is not the quickest thing in the world by any means, and I have my database and ProjectPAK on it, which even though it seems like it would be quicker, sometimes it's a little slower that way. Just to show you, if I open up, I guess it's not as big as some of your guys's, but it's fairly large. You'll notice when I open it, it opened it almost instantaneously. And if you look down here, I know there's a delay on your end. You'll see that it's loading in the background, but the last node that I was working on happened to be alternate, so I can actually work in that node and do different things that I want while it's loading in the background the entire time. So there's no more 10 or 15-minute wait to load large estimates. Because if I click on something inside here, even if it didn't have it loaded, it loads it instantly, all the while it's loading your estimate in the background. And depending upon your computer, obviously, and what else you have open. And as you can see, it's a little over 25,000 line estimates already open. Now I can do whatever I want inside it. And this one, just to show you too, if I open this one, it's quite a few levels deep before I even get to products, but just to show you, depending upon what your estimate needs are, you can say you can go 10 or 20 levels deep if you have the desire or the need. It makes no difference to us. So that way it allows you to break up the job as many ways as you want and be as flexible as you need to be.
Hey, Dave.
Looks like there's about 10 more minutes, so if there's any other questions, feel free to shoot.
Dave, I don't know if this is something you'll go over on the document part, but we utilize the notes portion of the section row to describe what's in each room.
Mm-hmm.
How's that process different now since there's no section rows?
There are section rows. I was just saying that if that's all you were using, section rows was simply for a header, you don't necessarily have to use them anymore. But you can certainly, if you used to use section rows, just like this is an old estimate where I did, you can still use them and still put notes on them. So from a document standpoint, if that's what you used to do, it probably still makes sense to still use them for that purpose. And then you'll see when you do documents, you just don't tell it to turn on the header for that particular summary node. So you could still use them the same. The other thing you could do, like I say, it depends on everybody's documents are different. So even for this summary node, you can actually just add notes for it, and it would serve the same purpose. If you told it from a document standpoint to print the header, it'll print these notes right underneath it, just like it used to on the section row. Is there any last questions?
I'm assuming all the work groups, all that stayed the same? Sorry.
Yep, nothing changed with work groups at all. They're still, you can assign them from this dialog box here, or you can still assign them on the grid just the same as you used to be able to.
And overhead percentages and taxes and all virtually the same?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
When you, right now, you show products same, so in our old world, I guess, where you have running trim 21st floor would be the work order level.
It could be.
Still do that in this. You just.
Yep. Yeah, you'll see when you do conversion, you actually, you it used to be in conversion. You told it, you still do. You say, okay, here's what I want to be the job item. Here's what I want to be the work order. And you
Right, subtotals versus in-grids, yeah.
Right. Now it's summary levels. So this is considered a first summary level, a second, and a third. So now you're just choosing that maybe your job items, the first summary node, so it says 21st floor total, but your work orders aren't until you get to the third level. So you have a lot more ability to be more flexible with conversion than you used to be able to, because now it's, it depends on what you want to make work orders, and you also tell it when you're conversion what the scope of what you're converting is to the scope of the tree, whether it's the entire tree, just the base bid, just the change orders, or whatever you have highlighted. So there's a lot more flexibility there than what there used to be.
Well, I like the changes, Dave. Thank you for doing all this. I'm anxious to start working with it.
You're most welcome. We are very glad to finally get it released. Took us a lot longer than we had wanted it to, but hopefully, as you'll see, it was well worth the wait because there's quite a few changes for the better. All right. If there aren't any more questions, I guess we'll call that a session. I appreciate you guys coming in and listening. Hopefully that'll get you guys moving forward with the new version.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.